Okay, so in the last video, we have created a user controller, user service, user module, user DTO. I mean, just a basic implementation of creating a user in database using TypeORM. And we also set synchronization true in the TypeORM config so that whenever you were changing the entities, the database was getting updated real time whenever you start the application. Now, next thing is let's understand this flow. We need to create a local strategy. Auth service also, because we haven't created auth module, auth service, auth controller that will create, and we will also introduce the passport module, NestJS passport, for initializing the session and saving the session. So first we will create a local strategy. First let's check our sign up. So here I just check this user sign up API which we have created in the last video, and it works fine. I am able to create a new user in the system. Now let's create a auth module, auth controller, all these passport strategies, guards, serializer. So we need auth controller, auth service, and we can create a auth module, right? Rest we also need to create a strategy, guard, and I think serializer. These are the three things we need. Strategy at least we need. So we will create a auth strategy first, and we are using passport local strategy, which works with a simple implementation where you need a username password for the login, because local strategy will help us to log in. We are not going to write a logic in the user service. Local strategy will take care of adding or validating the username and the password. So I have installed NestJS passport local, these helper modules. And now we will write a simple local strategy, which is injectable class. Inside this, we will just define, okay, export class, local strategy, extend a passport strategy. Be careful with this because I need to deal with the different versions, and different versions are not compatible. Local strategy also, we will just try to refactor it later. But local strategy doing nothing much. It is just adding auth service. And inside this method, we are just going to write a validate. And so what this validate method is doing, auth service.validate user. It is using auth service. Dependency injected auth service, and auth service is just validating a user based on username and password that will tell us, okay, user is valid or not, user exists in database with the same password or not, right? Now next thing is this local strategy, and then we can create auth service. Auth service is nothing but a simple service. Let's rename the local strategy with auth service, so we don't need to write the whole thing again and again. Auth service, and auth service again I think going to use user service. Right, we have two modules, user module, auth module. Auth module is going to use user module, user service. So here we have injected user service inside auth service, and that is just validate user. That means whatever the username password, because auth module doesn't deal with the database. Auth module is dealing with the data, session, these strategies and all. User module deals with the database. So don't need to populate the TypeORM thing everywhere. So user auth module just deals adding user service. User service already talks to database. So we are fine. You just do find by email. Or find by email, okay, we have a username. That's a string. So if user exists with that email, then we will just use it. So that is just a auth service, which is doing just a validate user. So here we'll fix that username or password. We are just passing the validate user, which is actually validating everything. Auth service. So here it is email and password. So here you might get confused little later. I'm explaining you now. Passport local strategy works with the username and password. So you can consider email as a username here. And we inside this validate user, we are calling the auth service. Auth service is again calling user service, which is actually comparing the username and the password. Okay, this is the logic is written here. It is doing all calculations. Now we come back to our auth service. Auth service is doing validate user and comparing the password and all. So first of all, find by email. Okay, user exists with the email, yes. Then let's compare the password. If compare password is same as whatever is stored in database in the hash version, and whatever you are passing, if both are okay, that means the user is valid. That we are doing in an auth service. So I mean, we just divided the responsibility of auth service and user service. Very simple. Now let's check on what we are going to write in the auth controller. So auth controller is another thing. Inside auth controller, we will just try to write a simple authentication API. We are going to use auth guard, simple login API, which will just take a username and password. If the authentication works, we will just return the cookies using express session. So this is our simple route. So now here we are using auth guard, use guard, auth guard, and post login. So whenever you hit a request to this controller, it will directly take you to the local strategy, which is doing nothing but validating the user. It is talking to auth service is talking to user service, and that's it. So this is how we are going to deal with the local strategy. Now let's check this end-to-end implementation in the next video. Hi everyone. So now let's create the user module, auth module. User module we already have. Inside auth module, just add auth service, auth strategy, auth controller, right? In the authentication, we have lots of things, and here TypeORM module.4 feature. If we are accessing the database, that is just optional. If you are accessing the database, then it's a must that you add a TypeORM module.4 feature. Now we have a auth module. Just import the auth module. So we have user module, auth module, and now we can start playing with this. So here, now important part is, because auth module using user service, so you also need to add a dependency injection of this. Otherwise you are getting error that user service is a provider, not part of auth module. So what you need to do is you need to import the user module inside a auth module, and your error will be gone. Now we'll do npm run start dev, and our application will be started. Yes, it is started. Now we can start playing with this. So there is a auth login endpoint is also created. We have a sign up, we have a login API. This is a user service, user controller, user module. We have a auth module, auth service, auth controller, and we are using bcrypt.js instead of bcrypt. Bcrypt.js is the native library. It won't break or it won't complain. Now we have fixed the bcrypt.js import. Now let's run the application. Okay. So what we are doing is unknown strategy local. So I know what is the error. I will fix it. So what I'm missing is we are not importing all the strategy or everything inside this auth module, and also we need to add a passport module, passport module.register. Then only we should be able to use this passport local strategy session true. And also here inside local strategy, we need to add a local strategy here. That's an injectable service. Right now we can start the application and start playing with this again. So I did a login, unauthorized. Let's see what we are doing here. Unauthorized. I got the reason why it is throwing unauthorized, because the passport local strategy by default works with the username and password. And I'm trying to pass email and password. Obviously that won't work, because default strategy expecting username and password, because the demo based on that. So we need to change it to the username password in the payload. Now username password, and I'm able to log in. This login really works, and I got the request.user, whatever the user is being set. Now next thing is, let's start dealing with the session. So what we want is, once you log in, you should get the cookies. That cookies you can again pass when you are trying to hit the protected API route. So we need to add a express session. Express session is a module which you can just add with the npm add express session, and express session, passport, all these three modules, express session, types, and the passport. And connect Redis. I will talk about this later. Redis we will talk separately, because Redis we are going to use as a persistence layer. So when we want to persist the session to the Redis, then we will be using Redis. Here for now, here we can just get a Redis service. So this is how you can get the service, injectable service, using app.get. We can get the Redis client using Redis service.get client. Once you got the client, we can use the connect Redis, or we will, for now we will just simply register the express session. So inside a session, it takes a couple of arguments, and those are really important helper arguments which we pass here. Okay, what will be the expiry of the token, session cookies, how the cookies will be created, are you creating some store to store the cookies, what will be the expiry, how the cookies, I mean all the parameters which are securing the cookies when you are exchanging the cookies between the client and the server. So this is how your default cookies looks like. You are passing secret which can be a environment variable, reverse, save, initialize cookies, maximum age, and couple of more argument you can add inside the cookies object. And initialize the passport. Here we are doing passport app.use passport.initialize app.use passport.session. That is another thing. And setting the secret from the environment variable. So now in the next video, let's talk about how this end-to-end works with Redis or without Redis. Okay, so now another thing is we have done lots of part of it. We have written a strategy. We will write an authentication guard, and we also need a serializer. What is the use of serializer? Because this passport is storing our session. So passport need a serializer or deserializer. When you extract the session, what should be the payload format, and when you put the session, then what should be the format. So we are using serializer and deserializer. So I will write a serializer class that will just have a two methods, serializer and deserializer. Serialize user.ts. So it is just an injectable class, serializer session user. So it has a two methods, serialize user and deserialize user. In deserialize, you can also, once you get the ID, you can also verify it from the user service. Okay, user exists, then done null. So this serializer will be used by passport serializer. When serialize, how to store it, the ID, and when deserialize it, then because when you deserialize it, you need to extract the whole user object. And when you serialize it, you just need to store the user ID inside a session. So once these things done, we will also write one me route or session route. So once you log in, you will receive a cookies, and save cookies we need to pass to a protected route so that we can access that route without being logged in, because we already logged in, we already have a session. If you don't have a session, we should not be able to access it. So for that, we are writing authentication guard. Authentication guard will just check if you are authenticated or not. So it is simple authentication guard, which is going to just check a request object. If request.isAuthenticated is there, then we are good. So here we will just check return request.isAuthenticated. It was autocomplete by the TypeScript request.isAuthenticated, and that's it we need to do. So is authenticated, that means this guard now can be added to any protected route. I mean, there are multiple ways to register a guard. You can make it as a global guard, or you can go to the controller route and just say use guard, authentication guard, because I want this guard only on some protected routes I have in system. So here on this me route, I have added authentication guard. Similarly, you can also create another session route and add authentication guard. Authentication guard will be checking, okay, your session exists, then only I allow you to access it. So now it's time to see this end-to-end in the demo with Redis or without Redis.